Hey guys, welcome to Status Coup. Jordan's on baby duty today, so I will be hosting and getting you guys caught up on what's going on in East Palestine. We have a lot of big news today. We have next steps that the EPA has taken. We have a story about a dam that broke near the site that's potentially leaching more dangerous fluids and toxins into the environment near the water tables. We have interviews with Bob Bocock, as well as other scientists talking about the dangers of dioxin. We have a little bit of an update from Friday, some of the information we talked about. And then the big news, we have Melissa Mays, Flint activist, who went down on the ground, organized with a few folks last week in order to do some soil testing and water sampling. Her team ended up feeling dizzy, intoxicated, just not feeling well at all, even through their N95 masks. So Melissa's going to catch us up on the latest with that. We'll also be joined by Ashley McCullough, who is an East Palestine resident. We have one of her speeches from the town hall on Friday, where a lot of the residents talked about issues such as illness. What the heck are they going to do if they need to move out? Are their residents safe? Is the EPA going to be testing as it should? Why are they leaving testing in the hands of Norfolk? At the town hall on Friday in East Palestine, where multiple EPA agents joined, as well as representatives from Norfolk Southern, we were explained to by the EPA that Norfolk Southern will be responsible for testing for toxins such as dioxins, and dioxins are known to be extremely toxic. They're a byproduct of burning vinyl chloride, which is one of the substances from the train accident and the massive controlled fire after the Norfolk Southern derailment in East Palestine. We'll also be speaking with a scientist who's going to explain to us exactly what dioxins do. We'll be watching a clip from an interview with Jordan, and kind of talking to Melissa and Ashley about what that means for their community, and Melissa on what testing she's done so far. So we'll go ahead and we can bring folks in so we can get the ball rolling. Hi, Melissa. Hi, Ashley. If you want to take just a moment to say hi.
Hello.
We'll be talking a little bit today about that crazy town hall, about the bridge the dam that broke that is spilling out toxins. It's extremely close to the site just this week, as well as some more information on the quote unquote steps that the EPA is taking or not taking in your all's area, as well as updates from Melissa, who is on the ground helping to volunteer to test, as well as you, Ashley, to see, what's going on there and if there's any, more news, because I know you guys have been getting the runaround on a lot of things, and information is coming in, it seems like, from a lot of different places that's hard to pull together. So what's the latest that you've heard, Ashley, as far as now we're hearing rumors, at least from the Pennsylvania side, that the EPA will be relocating people?
From what I heard, it's only up to a mile. It says relocation. They're not sure how long, and they're giving people about, I think, $500. From what I heard with Melissa too, because I'm not taking any kind of assistance from the railroad so far. I'm trying not to. I'm staying with family. But they're doing that while they disrupt the soil around the tracks and pull up the tracks. So we can actually smell it over this way. In Pennsylvania, where I'm staying, anytime you go outside, you can smell it. You have numbness in your mouth as well. And we're about 4 miles away here.
So in a 4-mile distance, you can smell now that and did it rain recently there as well?
Yeah.
So you have the rain and now they're digging up around the tracks, and so it smells stronger in the area.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Are you feeling any way with the smell? Is there anything that's coming with that, or is it just right now the smell?
Just a little bit dizzy, off and on headaches. Um, it's not as bad in town, but it's worse than it's been here today and yesterday.
Let's Colin, let's pull up the pictures of the dam break if you have those for us. This is over the weekend, I guess. I believe it was Saturday. So on the 4th, we got pictures sent to us of one of the areas where it's supposed to be a toxin mitigation site, very near the train derailment, where gosh, that just looks like a bunch of rocks piled up. But where their supposed dam and contamination site broke through and is now spilling over. And from what we understand, this isn't the first time this has happened. Do you recognize where that's at, Ashley?
Yeah, there's a smaller playground just underneath the bigger part of the park. So that has actually taken over that big area of field and also it was actually over into a parking lot of a restaurant that's in town as well. So it's went quite a distance, about a baseball field it covered. It was worse at night too. Even workers' trucks that we could see, it was almost up to their tires and it was surrounding it.
And is this the water runoff from where they cleaned up after the fire? Is this
This is
where all of the
actually
water comes from?
it's down further. Um, it's within the mile the park is, but it is down further from the tracks where the actual derailment happened.
Okay. Do you know why they had it blocked off by chance?
I'm not sure. I know after the town hall, we expressed our feelings about how it's being done and our concern about it being taken and just reintroduced into the air for it to be filtered, and our worry with that and kids being around there. And, there's no signs indicating that it's toxic or dangerous or anything. So right after that, they actually started putting up the dams. And we got all the rain and the dams couldn't withhold that. So it just had all of the water in that area spilling out. We didn't see anything filtering it. The only thing that was there to do anything were the dams.
And those just look like rocks piled up to me. I mean, is that what they look like on the ground? I mean, seriously, it looks like I live by a creek. I lived out in the country, and when we wanted to catch crawdads, right? We'd pile up a bunch of rocks and we'd dam up the creek so that we could catch crawdads and minnows. And that's literally what it looks like to me. It looks like a rock pile dam.
It looks like that with plastic, just the cheap, thin plastic just being held up with some sticks, like a post. Like if a kid was told to build a dam, that's what you would get if they had some of those supplies. I've never seen anything like that. I mean, even in flood areas, you see sandbags or something that will help with some kind of barrier. But what was the dam for? Where was it going to go after that? I mean, water is flowing from there. So eventually, no matter what they built, it is going to overcome that.
So you all didn't even get any information about why they dammed it up in the first place?
Other than what we were saying, other than us being uncomfortable with the way it was being handled. So that's the only thing that would make sense, that they try to do a different way. But I mean, not even being an engineer, it's not going to work. It's just an odd thing for them to have done. And it might have put more contaminants further in more amounts, because all of that was pulling and settling on the bottom, and then that dam breaks. So you have all of that pressure pushing that lower stuff to actually continue to contaminate the soil and ground, and possibly even the water that supplies our town.
Oh, yeah.
Because all of those are actually right in that area.
It's interesting because there was a lot of people, and one of the places that we tested down the creek was just past that. And we're talking about, oh my God, first of all, those booms don't do anything. The water flows or anything. They weren't stopping anything, trapping anything. And the aerators, we had N95 masks that were rated for VOCs, right? The volatile organic compounds. So we should have been fine. We were fine in the house. we weren't in there long, but we didn't smell anything. It was when we got to where they were aerating and where the creek was moving that we started to be able to smell it almost right away. We're like, what in the world? We were told by toxicologists that this would be okay, but then they didn't know that it was being aerated and shot into the air. And so now the question is, what's happening? What's causing this reaction to make these, to make it inside the home? Okay, sure, it smells bad if you don't have the VOC mask, really like the heavy duty N95s we had. But you get towards that water moving, and now the flooding and the damming and all that stuff. Why is it so bad? So we were asking all these questions and posting videos, and residents from all over. Purdue was out there, actually. I'm a professor that I'm familiar, that we've worked with in Flint, was out there doing samples saying, look at this, stay away from these creeks. So it almost seems like they're like, well, we can't do anything about how bad the creeks are, so let's just dam it up so maybe there's less water moving and everything. So it looks like let's just keep it all in one spot and maybe it'll be more contained, which is obviously, it's still the same thing. It's like they don't understand that water, air, and even soil move, like in the world. So it travels and it moves. So it's just, now it's flooded, and now all of their soil is just, because also apparently they don't realize that soil absorbs water, and if the water's contaminated, there goes the soil. And then they're talking about the wells and everything. That comes from underground and the aquifers. That's all of these things are really like common sense things, and they're just like, no, it's fine. It's over here, or maybe it'll go 18 feet when some of the wells are only 20 feet deep, down in the ground, and it's like, oh, okay, it's gonna stop. And there's gonna be a 2-foot gap, and everything's gonna be, oh my god. So yeah, it's as if the contaminants and the toxins don't make your head hurt, then you got this.
And a lot of folks don't realize there are a lot of people in East Palestine that rely on well water. Isn't that correct, Ashley? Like, it's one of those places where you guys do have like city municipality water, but there are folks that are still reliant on well water. And the city municipality comes from 4 main wells that aren't very far from this site either.
Mm-hmm. And I do know that there were other wells that were located right beside the tracks. So these were there around the 70s. We used to have the big water, like water silos. They were there. And then I know there was something moved down into the ground. So I'm assuming that they may still be there, and that might be the backup water source. And like me and Melissa were talking, when they were using all that water to initially put out the fire, they said that they ran through so much water that we're going to see brown in our water. So it kind of makes you think, is that water in the reserve by the railroad tracks being pushed back through our homes?
And that's scary because that's water's been sitting there stagnant. So it's not good water. I mean, it's for emergency. Like, Ashley and I talked earlier, like fires. Okay, great. You don't have to really super worry about your water quality when you're putting out a fire. But when you're pushing it through to the people, yeah, you should probably worry about that. So water sitting, any kind of water sitting stagnant for any kind of amount of time is not going to be the best water, the highest quality water, and it's not going to be safe. I mean, it just, all of these things they're doing, they're like knee-jerk reactions to, what the people are saying or doing, and just it's like they're making their best guess. And if you look at the record, because they just, derailed again, the average is Norfolk Southern, you derail the train once every 3 days. So they should know how to handle this by now. But again, I don't think that maybe they just didn't get caught this badly before, to where the public, the world saw it and was like, oh my God, even the balloon didn't take people's attention away, and that people noticed. So now they're just like, oh, well, we know how to cover this up. We obviously don't know how to do it, or we have no intention to do it properly. So Norfolk's like, well, can we bribe the people? Can we give them $500 to go live somewhere else for God knows how long? Can we tell them that we're cleaning their homes when we're just sending folks in with little, basically all natural Clorox wipes for things that don't help with this contamination at all? Can we say we're going to test for this and we don't? Can we turn these air monitors off? I mean, it's just all these things, and people are like, we have cell phones, we have the internet, we can talk to one another, and we can post what y'all are doing, and most importantly, what you're not doing.
Absolutely. And, I feel like they've gotten away with being able to cover things up. And one of the most atrocious things to me is that there's this arbitrary 1 mile radius, as if everything is going to be within a mile of what happens, as if that's how nature works. You would think that they would base the maps on how the testing was going. right? And where people were filing complaints about illnesses, and where they, animals had been dying. 3 deer were found down by, a stream 3 or 4 miles away. No bullet holes, no indication of any other kind of death, just along the side of a stream. There have been foxes dying, pets dying, chickens, birds, fish, and then folks are sick. So you think that the radius that they want to map for cleaning this up and their liability would be around where reports are coming in.
No, that's science. That's silly of you to think. Science, common sense, and common decency, and treating East Palestine residents as humans. You're just being crazy there. No, I mean, they're under the impression, like they said, that water doesn't move, air doesn't move, and soil doesn't move. I mean, that there is this like invisible wall that's just holding it all in, and it'll be fine. However, that water is going to make its way down to the watershed to the Gulf of Mexico. And then that air obviously is going to, there's people all the way over to Virginia complaining about, having nosebleeds, burning eyes and throats, because air moves, soil moves with the air and the water. And water is going to just continue to bring those toxins and that disgusting question mark and all the reactions, because it's not just the 7 or 8 contaminants and byproducts that, that we found out and that we've been talking about, and that, the 5 that the EPA told the residents about. It's not just those like 7 or 8. It's also, how are they interacting with one another? How are they interacting with the air? How are they interacting with the soil? How are they interacting with the water being aerated? These are all questions that none of the officials will take or answer. So we're hoping that scientists can get independent results, can actually, because one of the unfortunate things is I saw that somebody posted that AECOM is down there with the testing, and AECOM was brought in by the state of Michigan to manage Flint's lead service line replacement program that is now 3 years overdue and messed up. So, oh my God, apparently we share so much. The different disasters, yes, they, one started off with basically a bomb. The other one was a corrosion bomb, but the cover-up is the same. And that's been the huge problem, is that this playbook of downplay, dismiss, lie, demean the people, downplay everything, dismiss, deny, delay. And they're going to start testing for dioxin, hopefully after that they can't anymore, because there's a time frame where you can pick these up. But also they're not testing the residents' water. I mean, at this point, I'd be like, well, are you even testing for heavy metals? Because, you blew up a train.
And that's kind of a question too, because even speaking with the group of people that I know, and after my parents went to the doctors and I went to the doctors, we all had high blood pressure and our oxygen levels were off. So that could be an indication that there are heavy metals present, and we're still having, the higher elevated blood pressure, which you can feel it in your chest whenever you're in the area. So you have a harder time breathing, as well as, a rapid heartbeat. And now people in Chippewa, that's close to Beaver Falls, people over there are starting to realize, well, we're having symptoms. Rashes are starting. We're getting the same sinus things that were complained, and it's more than just a couple things. Like, it's enough to be like, it's not just in my head. I'm having headaches now. I'm having the ear pain. I'm having bloody noses, like stuff that doesn't normally happen, that we're seeing that we had here and now they're starting to get. So maybe something is moving that way, or from them disrupting the soil up here, it's starting to get to them in their homes.
Possibly. And that's something I would love, Colin, if you could pull up, I would love to hear, for you guys to hear Bob Bocock's comments on this, because he was talking about the EPA's responsibility, but then also the hazards with the dam breaking, as well as exactly what you were just talking about, Ashley, with the soil being disturbed. So Colin, if you want to pull up first the one where Lewis interviewed him on the ground, and then if you want to play the other two, I think if we just want to play them all three and subsequent, and then we can come back and respond to those.
We'll start off with what's behind us here. We've been kind of talking about these sorts of water pumps and aeration devices all week. Both myself and John Farino, who was here with me for most of the week, have been trying to get some answers on these. You seemed pretty shocked when you got here and saw what was going on. Can you explain a little bit about what we're seeing here? Well, like I've been saying all along, as the investigation unfolds, I really am beginning to believe that they're taking a really bad situation and actually making it worse.
Now, in this area here, what they're doing is they're aerating the water. So vinyl chloride, which is one of the chemicals of concern, but there are many other chemicals of concern, but the vinyl chloride is a volatile chemical, and so when they throw it into the air, it will separate from the water. It's aerated, and it becomes part of the air, and then the sun will ultimately, and oxygen, destroy it. Oxygen is very good at destroying vinyl chloride. The problem is the vinyl chloride's actually gone down. This is probably one of the most porous places for water from these creeks to get into the groundwater. And this is the groundwater supply that is the drinking water supply for this community. The community has 5 groundwater wells, and those 5 groundwater wells were identified by the state of Ohio as being very transmissive, meaning that this water that's in this creek can end up in those groundwater wells in literally days. That is what causes me so much concern about this. I was anticipating that the rail spill site, which is a good mile from here in the, I believe, easterly direction, that it would take several months for those chemicals to transmit to this direction. So in fact, what we're seeing here is a complete circling of the community. So you've had the rail spill over there that went into the creeks brought it here. These creeks literally encircle the entire community. And by taking it off like this and putting it into the air now, they're preventing it from going into the subsurface soils that will ultimately start permeating all of these homes around here in their basements and in their subslabs. And it'll be a chronic contamination. What I mean by that is it's something they're going to experience for decades.
So the EPA has very, very
Here we're talking about the aeration, about the soil being disturbed. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Melissa, you had this look on your face, and then my audio stopped working earlier, so I was like, oh, no, y'all can't hear me. Sorry about that. But yeah, he's talking about the soil being disturbed, the aeration, and just like Melissa, just like what you were talking about as well, it's not just going to stay in this area. Soil moves, air moves, water moves. What did you guys think about that? Ashley, what are your thoughts in hearing what Bob says? Is that reflective of what your all's concerns are on the ground as well, seeing it day to day?
Oh, yeah. And even hearing what he's saying and knowing just by seeing the stuff being done and the mistakes being made, you know, it's not right. And it's going to make more problems. Like he's even explaining it. I mean, it's hard to watch and hear that.
I'm sorry. You know, the EPA, one of the things they said at the town hall the other night was that they were going to charge Norfolk Southern triple if they don't do their testing properly and they don't do the cleanup properly. Well, what is that worth when it's lives? I mean, what I keep hearing from folks like DeWine, folks like the EPA, is this focus on money. Don't worry about it, you guys. We're going to charge Norfolk triple if they do it wrong. Who cares at that point if they've done it wrong and people are sick and people aren't being relocated?
So I want to point out that the EPA fined General Motors, DuPont, AC Delco. They fined them, I think it was $35 million to clean up the Flint River years before they switched our drinking water source. Well, they never paid the fines. They ended up filing for bankruptcy and transferring the properties over to a Racer Trust. None of that even mattered, that they didn't pay to know this stuff, and they did not clean it up, and we ended up drinking it. So now we have to forever live with the permanent damage. So these fines are a joke. And the EPA over the years has been so defunded and so they've politicized, and that's what my face was. People are making political comments in the comments. They really shouldn't, because that's going to let Norfolk, you start the finger pointing, because this is what happened in Flint when they were like, well, it's a Democrat problem. No, it's a Republican. They both sides failed us. Both sides failed East Palestine as well. Both sides have failed the planet, our environment, our health. For decades, it's been an ongoing thing. Corporations and industry have more rights than we do. Okay, that being said, they point fingers at one another, and then they let the guilty slide away. And that's what happened in Flint. So please don't let this happen. Please don't be a part of this to make this happen for East Palestine residents, because they didn't vote to be poisoned. So that does not matter. Both sides are failing them. Let's remember, and again, back down to what you said about money. They're making this about money and politics, this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to, do that. It does not change what happened in East Palestine. It does not change what's happened in Flint. But what's happening now is that the residents are taking care of one another, and that money doesn't make it even to the residents. So it doesn't matter. Finding them when this company is worth billions, like what did they say? Their liquid assets were over $12 billion. Yeah, you're going to find what? If you $10,000, that means nothing to the residents who are paying the fine. They are paying the price, and the cleanup efforts that they're doing are causing more harm than good. And again, same thing that happened in Flint, same thing in Jackson, Mississippi, same thing in Baton Harbor. All the things. Just let's throw more chemicals at it. Let's talk about fines like we're really doing something. That's not helping the people. But again, we're making a public health, a human issue, a political one, a dollar sign one, and slap on the wrist one. We need to stop that type of talk and remember that these are human beings. And when the people are like, why don't you just move? Well, okay, I don't know who's got like all this money laying around in America, because we're not good at that, to where they can just up and move. And honestly, I've been all over North America talking to other poison communities, air, soil, water, all of the things. I don't know where I'd even move to. Where if somebody want to buy my poison water house for what I owe on it, that's one thing. Ashley, I don't think anybody's going to come in and buy your house for what you owe on, and especially since it's a hazardous site. But also, even going and staying with family outside of town isn't far enough. There are people in Pennsylvania that are suffering states away. So exactly where to move to on this planet, that's not contaminated. The folks need support, and we need to remember this is a human issue, human rights issue. These are people, not dollar signs, not items to be tossed aside or fodder for a political argument. That's me standing on my little perch thing. Sorry.
Stand up. Stand up there, Melissa. That's right. It's true. And the dehumanization is one of the hardest things. And I can't imagine what it's like, for you, Ashley, and you guys begging and begging to be heard. And well, I can't imagine, because I'm Appalachian. I grew up near coal temples. I grew up with coal runoff running into my backyard. I grew up with sometimes the well water pouring out different colors, So I can relate, to saber rattling and asking for help and begging for change and being ignored by the corporations and swept under the rug like you don't matter. I do understand. And it's, I did want to play. There's two more clips from Bob Bocock. One of them, he talks about the dam, so that's kind of informative too. But I thought we could weigh in on that. And Ashley, after we watch these, I would love to get your input on what Bob's saying here and kind of what you're hearing in the town regarding kind of what happened with the dam recently with all the rain, and then other worries that maybe you guys have, because it's flooded, all up and down, the Ohio River Valley. It flooded here in Indiana, flooded in Kentucky, flooded in Ohio. So was thinking about you guys up there and what worries you guys might have with so much rain on top of everything else. Colin, if you could play those clips, and then we could circle back around and after hearing what old Bob's got to say.
So the EPA has very, very limited ability to actually enforce anything.
Right. And something, with this too, I did some digging into the area around where a lot of the kind of aeration we were seeing going on where we actually spoke when we met in person, and the water kind of overflowing there. That area is seemingly right on the line of being on top of where the groundwater supply is.
Worse yet, I don't know whether you've seen it, but if you go between the groundwater wells and this creek, they've installed a monitoring well. Right. It's physically there. I've seen it. There are supposed to be 4. I found 2.
Okay.
They're not going to give Bob a map. Right. So I've had to physically go out and find them on my own. They flood those out. Now they're sealed and they're capped and all the whatnot, but that's freshly disturbed dirt. It shouldn't be subject to a contamination situation like that, where they're basically flooding it out and blowing it out. It's funny. I sent the photograph to other experts. I'm a water guy.
Right.
I know guys that are super. I had the gentleman out there who basically babysat the piece of equipment that Texas A&M and Carnegie Mellon had in town for 10 years. He fine-tuned that and wrote the standards and specifications for its use. And he said, boy, if you ever want to cover up, this is how you do it.
We'll start off first with the temporary dam that overflowed a second time in the last week, basically, it seems like. We saw an interview that you did, and you kind of explained the whole situation going on there as out of control and haphazard, to use your words. Do you want to expand on what you mean by that and talk a little bit about some of the potential implications of what we saw happening there?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I also went to the meeting that was conducted by the state Department of Environmental Protection and the EPA, and it turned into a circus for no better words to describe it. And it's unfortunate because the representative from the railroad got up and he literally said, "This is the worst I've ever seen." Well, when you have one of the wealthiest railroads in the world standing up and saying this is the worst I've ever seen, and then you see a response where they actually hire contractors to go out to people's homes and spray disinfectant to try to cover up or mask the smell of the chemicals, that's pretty pathetic. It's one of those kinds of things where you have these people who are claiming to be professionals going out in the world with their little handheld devices, trying to sniff out levels that would be suffocation levels, as opposed to carcinogenic levels, and it's just placation. They think that they can come in and just mow these people down, and then baffle them with bullshit. It's frankly it's frustrating. There's the treatment system. I was challenged by a reporter out at a press conference last Friday, and he literally said, "Oh, you're wrong. The state took us through the whole system, and they're scouring the bottom and they're airstripping in those tanks over there." And I said, "Wow, I don't know how they would do that, but let me go look." And I walked over and I took a look, and the top of the tanks were all wide open. So if they were doing airstripping in open, vessels like that, it's just ridiculous. And we're making suggestions. The good news is I believe the EPA is listening to the suggestions, but don't anyone be fooled that the EPA has all the answers and that this is going to somehow get solved by the EPA.
Oh man, it dawned on me, because I hadn't had the thought that they were using the disinfectants to cover up the smell of the chemicals, just rather that they were irresponsible with who they sent to clean up. When Bob Bocock said that, it was like, that's likely what they were doing. Ashley, did you notice? Had you been to your house like before the cleaners came and then after? What was that experience like?
I didn't have any of the service done because I was skeptical right from the time that it happened. From the time they said everyone can go home, I got a pain in my chest. I know it's not safe. There's no way it's safe. And they said we can go home. Like, I was in shock. And then these different cleaners. So I'm researching, seeing what they're using to test the air, what they're going to do in steps. And there really wasn't any kind of set step game plan. Like, here's a number here, here's a number there. You got to call them. We'll direct you over here. We're going to direct you over there. We'll tell you what we're using, but we're not going to let you in the house to witness those things. We're going to make you sign papers. We're also going to use cleaners, but I'll tell you the name of it. So when I looked it up, it's just a industrial Febreze, basically, that smells like lemon. It's overpowering. And a couple swipes of a vacuum, which you're actually bringing that back into the air at that point. So you're covering it, bringing it into the air, and leaving. And I mean, the air test for VOC, that's all it says. 0.1 or 1.0 VOC. What VOC? So now they're cleaning blindly on top of blind, and nothing's being done right. And I even called out the company. And then I also talked to him again. He said, we're not giving anyone that idea. We're not certified in that. We're not certified in this. We can't do VOC chemical cleaning. They're not certified in biohazard cleaning. None of that. But why are you doing the contract for the railroad then? He had no answer. I asked him if he would just not, because it is a false sense of hope for these people, because now they're like, my house is clean. I'm not keeping up with the news. I feel good. Then whenever that dissipates, wow, My throat really hurts. I have pits in my throat. My eyes are watering, my headache, and I feel like I'm going to pass out. It's doing nothing. I never used any of it. It's wild. And that seems like they're doing the same thing with what Bob said. It's like, we're just going to try this, see if it works. We're going to do that, see if it works. We don't have a set game plan, but everyone, if you have an agenda to conquer a big task, you're going to write it down. You're going to check stuff off. They're not doing that. Let's throw a dart. Let's hope it doesn't get that one. Let's pull that one off. This isn't working. So let's make everyone happy. Let's do it this way now. Well, that didn't make them happy. So now let's put all the water into a box with the lid open and hope for the best.
And then scrape the bottom to test
yeah.
the bottom. I mean,
so
it wide open. That sounds like a not a great plan.
Yeah. So let's stir it up and let it go back in the air the same way that they're doing, but in a box. So that's safer.
Melissa, this reminds me, and I watched the whole, I watched your all's town hall, the one that, the mayor was at, and the EPA and Norfolk Southern. And there was one thing that struck me that reminded me a lot of Flint. And it was the fact that instead of saying that they were going to make sure that people are safe, that they were going to take enough precautions to make sure that people are safe, they kept saying, and Ashley, in just a few minutes, after we kind of address this, I would love for Colin to show the video where you spoke, and you gave your speech, actually, because I think it talks about some of this stuff. But the thing that the EPA kept saying that struck me, because I am trained in public relations, it stuck out like a sore thumb. They kept saying, we want you to feel safe. We want people to feel safe. We want people to think that they're safe. I mean, they said the thing. We want you to think that you're safe. We want you to feel comfortable living here. It's not about feeling. Am I safe? Right? Are you safe? Are your children safe? Are your pets safe? Can you guys grow your crops next year during the spring? I mean, it's about to be seeding time, right? Can you grow your tomatoes? Can you, garden? Can you go hunting? Is it safe to go hunting? Is it safe for your kids to play in the creek? Is it safe to go fishing? Is it safe to breathe the air and drink the water and live your day-to-day lives? Who knows right now? So they're saying we want you to feel this way, but they're not saying that we're going to make sure you are safe. They just want you to feel safe. I heard that repeated probably 40 times during that press conference or during that town hall, and my mind was blown. And I'm sure, Melissa, you've heard that same kind of rhetoric in Flint before.
And then once you bring the science to them and you show them and prove to them that it's not safe, then they turn it around, and mainstream media is real good at picking this up, saying, well, the people don't feel safe and they're just traumatized. They just don't trust the water or the people. Well, of course we don't. It's still being served up through contaminated, crumbling infrastructure, and people are still dying. Common sense, eyes, nose, mouth, no. But it's like, oh, well, the people are just traumatized, so they just don't trust. They just don't feel safe. No, we know better. How I feel is a lot of expletives. That's how I feel. And I also know, however, in my, lead damaged brain, that you're lying, and you can't even say, and they will not to this day, and we're coming up on 9 years, they will not say if our water is safe or not. Just a yes or no. Say a yes or no, and they won't do it because they know that they cannot. And that's what they're doing in East Palestine. They're going to make you feel like you're crazy. It's a total, they're experts at gaslighting, because they want to protect their bottom dollar, and they want to make it look like they're doing good things while they're just causing more harm. And then they're going to give some of the flyers they were giving out to residents. Do you know where VOCs come from? Your candles. We can't test for dioxins because y'all barbecue. When I was there, nobody was outside barbecuing in February in a disaster area. So I'm like, what in the world? But then they give you these flyers saying, them candles of yours, that's a VOC. And then the air fresheners, oh my God, that's where your VOCs are. These cleaners. It's not from the big, huge nukes that just basically got dropped on your city. No. It's you because you're dirty, filthy people. And we had that when we had a Shigella outbreak and people got really sick and hospitalized. They said, well, y'all just aren't washing your hands because you're afraid of the water. I'm like, wow. And they're like, maybe you should wash your hands after you change diapers. I'm like, oh, so we're stupid, filthy, and rolling around in poo. great, but also, you know, and so that's what they're going to do, because we get smarter over time. We know how to throw the science back at them, and we know how to fight them, and they're just like, oh, it's your feelings, isn't it? And I'm like, do I look like I have feelings besides irritated? No. And Ashley, good luck to them down in East Palestine, all the people in power, because yeah, she ain't gonna be sitting there talking about her feelings either. She's talking about science and also how wrong this is, and also hoping that, you know, they'll do something right, but knowing that they're not going to without being shoved like over the cliff. So, you know, and that's the thing is, yes. So absolutely with the, well, your feelings. I'm like, are you saying that because I'm a girl? Is that what you're saying? Oh no, you're just talking down to all of us with dismissing and downplaying. I see what you're doing, and that's great. But let's talk about the toxins that are actually murdering people.
And Ashley, that's what I heard over and over again at the town hall. And if you have, what was your takeaway from the town hall? I'm almost speechless because it was one of the craziest things I've watched in a while. So, but my mind was just blown with the mayor saying, you know, I can't do anything because I'm a part-time mayor, with Norfolk Southern standing up and not even having questions answered on the type of testing they're going to be doing. And then at the same time, we want you to feel safe.
We have to think the mayor has never had anything like this. Like, the mayor does events, he does family kind of things, and he's an all around good guy, and he will go to these events, be there, and he's not used to this. And I don't blame him. I don't think anyone would be able to handle it and not outburst or not have any kind of issues whenever the whole town is saying, well, we need your help. We need you to do this. Hurry up. And I mean, it's very difficult. And we all feel that kind of stress, and we all feel the need to reach out and hurry up and do something, but we're not seeing it from them. So it's hard to do the finger pointing whenever we know who did it. And I mean, it's just plain and simple. Norfolk should be really handling it. And another thing that I find wild is they haven't went around and checked on anyone. We don't know if people are okay inside their homes. Half the town that you see there are out-of-state plates. They're people that are workers. So yeah, our town looks busy, but I know a good majority of them have either left or were staying in other places even before they switched us to, we need to go to a hotel now. But checked, and I never took anything at all from them. So why wouldn't they come and say, hey, was there something that we could do? Or are you perfectly fine with this? I haven't heard anything. I had one letter in the mail, and that's it. I mean, it's easy to find a phone number or, you know, who resides in these houses. I haven't seen an attempt for that. So it really shows how much empathy they have for us. And it's kind of like, let's hurry up, get it done. And that's the same thing they portrayed on the stage. Very to the point, we're doing this kind of answers. So it's the whole town wants to outcry and be heard because we feel stuck and we feel like no one's listening. So it's just very difficult to deal with.
So you would think that at least the EPA, the CDC would step in to come in and monitor these health issues. They would be providing an actual free clinic that did more than give your blood pressure and check on how your fees are. Even though that's important, I'm not downplaying mental health whatsoever. But when you're facing a massive crisis because they dropped a bomb in your backyard, you need the health care analysis. You need to be able to be screened and be screened properly. And we know they know how to do it. It's just a matter of not.
If I can do the simple research and find out how to do these things on my own, and in a month, really figure out how the machines work inside out. You have to do a bump test for the air at the beginning. You have to make sure it's calibrated before you go in. If it just has VOC, well, then you need to be attaching the tubes to actually pull in the air to check these individual vials for these individual. Can't just be like, well, I'm blindly checking it and you just have a VOC, or I'm going to scoop up this water and put this little strip in and that's what you have. No, there's a whole process to each one of these things. And it doesn't seem like any of it's being done properly.
Right. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I heard you talk about in your speech. If you could play that for us really quick, Colin, the Ashley speech, not the interview.
That is a quarter mile away from the site, and as you can see, there aren't as many people here as all the other things that were put together from the derailment. This is the least amount of people I've seen gathered, and I don't know if it's because of the information you are giving or not, but every person that I've talked to that's reached out to me does not feel comfortable in their own homes. They either have severe issues, reactions, their kids vomiting, nosebleeds, numbness in their mouth, numbness in their fingers. They have stomach cramping, they have diarrhea, they feel foggy and drunk. People are driving down the road, look like they're all under the influence. I've watched at least 6 or 7 people in 10 minutes swerve and almost hit people. Cars park. And now you're saying it's okay for me to take my kids into my house. When after 30 minutes I'm there, I throw up. My mouth goes numb. I can't think properly. My head pounds so hard that it takes 3 hours when I leave the area for it to dissipate. It is not safe in my home. I can't sell my home. And if I would sell my home and a family moves into my family home, how would I feel if a child gets cancer because of that? I do not think the houses are safe. Some may be because of their structure. My house is not safe, and many other people's homes are not safe. We have to sit in other places uncomfortable, just like that man in a small bedroom. Some people can't afford. They're working to go to hotels. They're paying to be in a hotel to pull their children out of this town to watch their symptoms dissipate. And I know for a fact you have all experienced a symptom. You know you have. And then you leave and it goes away. And you come back and it's here again. I'm being told to live in that. My independent testing came up moderate, high on a lot of things. I can't live with myself to watch my kids die in my own home. And now I can't do anything with it morally. I'm stuck. No one's coming to save us. You guys are giving options for these things here. We want to know numbers. We want to know how it's going to be taken care of. We wanted to hear a game plan tonight from you guys to say this is where we're going, not 3 weeks. So now I have to wait another 3 weeks before anything's done. You haven't said anything about surface testing. You haven't said anything about testing dioxins in our home. Yes, you'll find a level, possibly. But if it's an extreme level and I'm living in that house, now it's not safe, just like the water.
Yeah, and that was the same story that we kind of heard. Your story, Ashley, is what we heard over and over and over again from the residents, is being nervous, being afraid. And right now, the Guardian just reported today, the 1 month anniversary from the controlled burn, as controlled as that was, right? That there is a plan to incinerate the soil from the Ohio derailment, from the site where the controlled burn happened. That may be why they're excavating the soil, so that they can then go take this soil, incinerate it. But the place that they're sending it to is a nearby incinerator with a history of clean air violations.
We've heard this for a while. We've been waiting because it's going to go right back into the air.
Right. And Kayla Bennett from the EPA, former Environmental Protection Agency employee. She was she's now an official with the Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility, which is a nonprofit that focuses on issues like these and the problems she saw at the EPA, as well as things that were done right. She's been ringing, alarm bells on what's going on here. And she calls this plan horrifying. She says, why on earth would you take this already dramatically overburned community and ship this stuff just a few miles away to have it deposited right back where it came from? So that is, one of the things that Jordan wanted me to ask was, Melissa, this sounds like moving toxic carcinogens one town over, which towns over are also having the same problems as East Palestine. So you're moving it one town over, you're going to burn it in a facility. This sounds a lot like the folks that were supposed to come in and redo the pipes.
So it's a wonder if AECOM is a part of this, because so what they it's the same thing. Basically, it's like, okay, well, you're poisoned. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take that contaminant and we're going to just move it over here and we're going to burn it. And because air doesn't move, soil doesn't move, water doesn't move, and things burn in the air don't come down to the soil or water. You're crazy for thinking that, you crazy people. But so when we started having hundreds of people die from Legionnaire's disease, it's bacterial pneumonia in Flint, they're like, oh, we know how to fix that. We're going to go ahead and throw more chemicals in. We're going to throw all these chemicals in, the extra fluoride, the extra chlorine, all these chemicals in. Now, those, they have a reaction, and it's a carcinogen. But here's the thing. People die super quick from the bacteria, and everybody knows that. We're going to go ahead and throw these chemicals at them in their water. They're going to interact with the volatile organics, and they're going to release this carcinogen gas into your face as it's steaming in your shower, and you're inhaling it and absorbing it and drinking it and all that. But then you're going to get cancer 5 years down the line. But that's 5 years. That's in 5 years. Right now, though, people are dying. So how are we going to fix this? We're not going to replace the infrastructure and pull the source of the contamination out. We're not going to do that now. We're not going to replace the pipes. We're going to put more chemicals to damage them further. But then we'll have less people dying in public right now. And we're telling you that we're fixing it by putting these chemicals in. They're kicking the poison can down the road so people die a little slower, so it's not as obvious, right? So it is the exact same playbook. Across the board. This is an insane decision. Okay, so this was toxic when you burnt it the first time, and you're making people really sick, and you've destroyed that, for a large portion of the country. That's fine. So you're just going to do it again? You're just going to move it, though, like a couple miles down the road and do the same thing again. Also, digging up and disrupting that soil and all that. Yep. So it's a kicking the deadly can down the road, but still, you're still getting poisoned. It's just going to be slightly different and from a little bit different distance, but it's still going to be, oh my God. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
And why didn't they take it somewhere and put it in an enclosed incinerator to begin with, instead of just lighting a massive bonfire?
Because they tried and it got stopped. On my way down to go work with Ashley down in East Palestine, Ashley sent me a text saying, hey, guess what's coming your way? And it was 2 tankers full of contaminated soil and contaminated water from East Palestine to be dumped up here in Michigan, in the Detroit area that has already got a huge contamination burden. 2 sites that Norfolk Southern chose that had already been shut down numerous times from numerous environmental violations. That's where they were going to just go ahead and dump it real quick and quiet, right? And they did the same thing to Texas, because apparently Texas and Michigan don't care what you bring across their borders and dump in our soil and water and our sewer system. In Detroit, they had the green flag because there was fracking waste from Pennsylvania being dumped into the Detroit sewer system. So that aside, that's what they were trying to do. They were just trying to put it in these tanker trucks and just just slide it across. Well, they got busted because people in Detroit and Michigan were like, what? And the fact that we didn't know about it in Michigan, East Palestine folks heard about it first. We're like, oh, what's going on here? So they couldn't do it that way. So now they're like, well, crap, we're stuck with this. What do we do to quietly move this and quickly move it? Who cares how safe it is? How much is it going to cost us? What's the cheapest thing that we can do? Oh, let's go find this other place that's got environmental violations. They couldn't care less. And let's just blow that place up and drop some nuke dust over there.
It so crazy. But they take it to McLean, Virginia. Take it up to the damn Hamptons. Take it down and drop it in Miami. And I'm not saying they should. Human life matters. My point is, when it comes to poor communities, this is how we're treated. Don't think for a minute, if this happened in the Hamptons, if it derailed, which, trains are usually pretty far from these areas. But if something massive like this happened, I believe the cleanup would have been handled differently. I truly do. I believe that if it hadn't been somewhere in Appalachia or somewhere in the Rust Belt, or somewhere in flyover country that's poor, they would have handled themselves. I really do think so, because they don't want to get caught. They don't want to get busted. And we don't have the money, in poor areas for the high dollar lawyers right? To go through the litigation and go through everything else. And I think that's part of why the exploitation happens. But just thinking, okay, let's take all this water and let's take this soil and let's dump it in another poor area because people are paying attention over here, makes a lot of sense that would happen.
Well, right before what happened with that truck going up her way, a couple of days before that, a train derailed right over there too. So it was an hour away from her, a train derailed, and then you have that more stuff up there. But I do have a plan for my property. If all else fails, I could always have some good clean fill to supply to some gardeners around the area where the CEO lives. I'll give it away free and haul it.
I love that, Ashley. That should be that should be an action. Go take the soil to his house.
I mean, we've already looked into some gardeners that are interested in clean fill around that area, so we never know. If it's safe enough for me, it's safe enough for you.
Right. If you're gonna ask me to drink,
that's how I'm looking at it.
Bring your kids down. You come down. You know, if it's safe. And
we've got some people ready to fill swimming pools too. So I mean, the options are endless at this point.
Oh man, that reminds me of one other point, and that is the dioxins, because we're talking about the burning of the soil again, talking about the potentiality of release of more toxins into the air. What's going to happen to that soil when they are disturbing it, and then when they move it, and then when they burn it a second time, because God knows there has to be some of those chemicals left in the soil. They're in there. So what happens when it gets burned again? And Thomas, if you could play the clip for me really quick, with Stephen Lester. He was actually at the Ohio River Valley organizing meeting that you guys had with the OEC. And he was one of the ones that was ringing the alarm bells on dioxin, which the EPA knows is dangerous. It's one of the top dangerous substances on their website. And then, they come to this town hall that we just showed that you spoke at, and they're kind of downplaying it. Oh, it comes off of cigarette smoke. It comes out of your grills, just like Melissa said. Dioxins, they happen when you're having your bonfires outside to roast your hot dogs on. Oh, come on, give me a break. Let's hear what Stephen has to say about the dioxins.
It's in the exact dioxins are formed in burning when on the surface of particulate matter. So all that black smoke that people saw in all those images that were shown when they were burning this stuff, that black smoke was a perfect furnace and place for dioxins to form. And so I'm very worried that the dioxins were in that cloud, that they settled on people's property in some distance away, and people as much as 15 miles away. At the meeting that I attended last week, talked about ashes from the fire landing on their property. There's plenty, as you said, of standards and guidelines and processes for figuring out if this level is high or if it's not, or if it's typical of what we find in the environment. So it's a good thing now that EPA has acknowledged that they will do some testing for dioxin, but this next step raises just a whole host of new questions, because the company is being required to do it. It's not going to be done by the agencies, although there's some questions about who's going to actually do this testing, at least that I've heard. So I'm very concerned that the company that's responsible for this accident is being asked to do the testing. If they were interested in doing this kind of testing, initially they would have done it when they did the test burn. That's the time to test in the air. Yeah, there's no easy test for dioxin. It's a pretty complicated chemical to analyze for, primarily because you have to have a high resolution in your analytical equipment to get down to the levels where dioxin causes its adverse health effects. So it's not something the public can generally do. I don't have a good answer for that, quite honestly, because there's all we can really try to hope is that someone like the agency EPA will go out and do honest testing, clear testing, with the traditional methods, not some new approach that I understand that Norfolk Southern is proposing, some kind of fingerprint approach that they think will be able to identify whether the dioxin that's out in the environment was actually from their burn. There's no experience with doing something like that.
Okay, guys, this story needs to get out. We're at 635 viewers. We have more than 300 likes. I say that so that the story gets out because YouTube has a tendency to suppress stories like these. So please hit that like button, subscribe if you're not, for updates on East Palestine, other on-the-ground coverage. This next Monday, Louis DeAngelis will be coming back to East Palestine. We're going to be covering more. We're going to be talking to more residents. So please sign up to statuscoup.com/join to help support our on-the-ground work. We don't take any money from millionaires. We don't have any big bankrolled corporations. We ain't out here hawking like gold IRAs or anything to fund our show. So if you could please donate. We're completely independent, publicly funded, and we'd like to get Louis back on the ground because there's lots of stuff happening on the ground that's really hard to cover remote, and that needs to be talked about, as the mainstream media is not paying very much attention to what's going on right now, or they're just taking the narrative from the EPA. And although there is some good journalism out there, a lot of it is gaslighting. It's like asking the police to investigate themselves, or after, the police shoot somebody, just taking what the police have to say and they're at their word. That's the same kind of thing with taking it from Norfolk Southern at their word, or from the EPA at their word, who right now both have to benefit from not doing enough because it costs money to take care of things. But people's lives are more valuable than that green, and they need to get to it. But the only way they're going to get to it is if we keep the pressure up. So what did you guys, I know at the last town hall, dioxins was a question. I don't feel like we got a good answer on how they were going to be tested for, just that they were going to start testing. Ashley, have you heard any updates on this? What are your all's feelings? What are the kind of the feelings on the ground about this issue?
They said they were going to test around by the track. But if they're going to test by the, it's not going to give you a good enough. They should be checking in multiple locations inside people's homes, because I know I didn't have a barbecue in my house. I know I didn't. I mean, you can track certain things in. I'm not exactly sure how dioxin works in the sense of bringing it into a setting. I'm assuming it's somewhat like radon, like you can track it in from the dirt, and that's a common thing found in your home. But if I'm not going in my home as much, and it's that deadly, I would assume you would find dioxin inside my home.
Well, I mean, do these people not know how HVACs work? Right? They bring the air in from the outside. Mm-hmm. They circulate it through your home, and then your vents, stuff settles in our vents, and they can stick around for a while. So you start back up. Yep. People might come home, start back up their AC, start back up their heat on cold nights, and they're stirring this stuff up. And no testing for it. They should be testing on the ground. They should be testing the air in the homes. They should be testing, the creeks. They should be testing the water on a regular basis.
You wouldn't believe how many people were getting free air filters. Like, oh, we're going to give them out here. We're going to get them out there. We're going to do this. But it's an air filter. It's not made for chemicals. It does not filter chemicals. So, I mean, you're going to walk around your house, you're going to stir it up and it goes back through, or, it's going to get past. Unless you buy something that is made to filter a chemical through your own system, I don't see the need in replacing one every couple of days.
Well, how did you guys going to be there on the creek doing the testing when you were wearing the N95 masks, which are stronger than a filter? How did that make you guys feel? Melissa, you could go first. Like, how did that?
I mean, they weren't COVID masks, because people were like, why are they wearing COVID masks? They were not. They were actually industrial. Come on now. They were actually industrial N95 respirators for VOCs, because that's what we were told, it would filter out. And when we were in Ashley's house and around her property, fine. We didn't smell anything, right? And we didn't smell anything until we got to where it was being aerosolized, where it was jetting out. And then even where the water was sitting stagnant at the creek, where the water was moving. So that's when we could start to smell it. And we got through that. We got the samples and got out of there. We were there, like, as soon as we started having the numbness and tingling, and as soon as we realized we could actually smell it, and it wasn't in our head, but it was also such a weird combination of smells. It wasn't even like it was real. But then by that time, you're already dealing with the neurological stuff. You're basically getting drunk is what's happening. So your brain's processing slower that you're smelling something and something's wrong. And then you can't put the words together. And then you can't remember why you went to your truck and you're dropping things. I mean, Naira was with me, Naira Sharif, and she was just standing there, like, with her arms hanging out, like, and we're like trying to wipe everything down to where we don't have any dirt, water, mud, anything on anything. We had covers on everything, trying to be as safe as we could. But also it was shocking because, these respirators were meant to be working in a chemical environment. And it wasn't enough because the aerosolized. So then it's like, okay, well, that's not enough. And this is what we were told by scientists would be fine. However, they weren't aware, neither, were we, that they're launching this stuff into the air and just spraying it everywhere. And we're like, oh, good Lord. So when people are like, what are they doing out there? We were not in COVID masks. Just knock it off. Okay. Second of all, we were wearing masks more than a lot of those other scientists who were out there. At least we had the stuff on and the gloves and all that stuff just to be on the safe side. But again, we were in there and out. And as soon as I realized, oh God, something's wrong with us, because we all got dumber, over time. And it was a 30-minute time period. As soon as we realized it, because we had the camera going the entire time for the chain of custody, right? To make sure that you could see all this. And all of a sudden we're like, oh God, we're drunk. Great. That's wonderful. We got to get out of here. And I was like, bye, everybody out, everybody go. And we got in the cars and we're like, throw all this crap away, all the PPE away. Like everything that touched anything's gone, And so we had everything sealed up and we're like, we're out of here. But the thing is that it's not enough. So when people are like, why aren't they wearing hazmat suits? I would like people to go look that up. Now that's for I also want to go back to what Stephen Lester, and he's from CHEJ, the Center for Health, Environment, and Justice. So the people who were talking about Love Canal, New York, up top, because he works with Lois Gibbs. They founded CHEJ. So that was a real cool throwback there. He actually worked with us in Flint about the total trihalomethane. So anyway, so that's it. And he said that basically Norfolk Southern's not testing for the presence of dioxin or that level. They're trying to do a fingerprint analysis like it was semen or DNA to say, oh, well, this dioxin was from the other stuff this town's burning in their grills, not our nuclear bomb that we blew up, which is absolutely insane. Okay, that's just, but it's what we should expect from this company that only cares about their bottom line. And as for dioxins, the problem is that once they are released into the air and they're in the soil and then people's bodies, the half-life for dioxins, they don't break down normally, right? It's not like a normal type of, hydrocarbon. It takes, the half-life is 7 to 11 years. And then it's very hydrophilic, meaning it loves water. So when you're inhaling it, drinking it, whatever, it's absorbed by your body faster, right? And it's in there, and it's going to be stored in the fat cells and all that great stuff. So, so there's all of that. So it is bad. It's bad, and it's the dioxin could have been avoided had they not set the I don't know, the vinyl chloride, 1.5 million pounds of vinyl chloride on fire, and they're going to reburn it. So again, we're also wondering what's happening with all of the other chemicals once they get burned again, and then interacting with one another. But yeah, we found that with the fact that we had so the problem is they're not telling people what's all happening, what's going to happen. It's like they don't know, but it's just they don't care. So there you go. But so people, even we went down with the best intentions, the best safety equipment that we could get our hands on, and we ordered what we were told to order from toxicologists. However, it wasn't enough. So you're worried about, so people should be talking about more than, dioxins are horrible, but then there's all the butyracrylate and all the other horrible things, and everything that's actually, what was the ethanol in your house, Ashley, was like insanely high. So basically you're getting drunk just walking into the house.
It was 200.
Right.
Inside your house. So you were feeling like that in your own home.
There was that, alcohol, a couple other chemicals, mostly all the ones that affect you neurologically. And the guy that tested the air, he was like, I am really surprised it didn't come out higher, because as soon as we opened the door to retrieve the samples after we let it run, the filter or the air run through the house and him collect it, he was hit by it. He felt funny, we got out of there pretty quick after that. And he was shocked. He was thinking it would be around a 6 or high.
A 6, and it was at 200.
Well, for the other things like vinyl chloride, I have a 2.0, but even in a place where you work in that, the acceptable amount for an 8-hour shift is 1.0. And then you have to take time off. And they even suggest that you don't drink and smoke in that line of work, because that will further damage you. So, I mean, there's regulation for working in it. I'm living in it worse. Like, I'm not personally, but other people are. My house is 2 blocks away. So there's a whole row of houses facing that. There's another row that has that Taggart Street dividing it. So I could only imagine what some of those were actually coming up as. And they don't even have, their results they were really easy to read. Let's put it that way.
What are your next steps? What is it that, what are you guys hearing? I know, I'll show it really quick. We did get a flyer in. You guys have been getting all kinds of flyers. Let's see here. The one I think on the very far left, that's your community health assessment. So I believe that was the one that had been given to you guys at the clinic that isn't even taking blood pressure, urine samples, or blood samples. So let's say here, it does tell people to report the symptoms that they're experiencing, any substances they may have been in contact with. Your drinking water, I'm not sure what that means, if it's been tested or it hasn't, maybe. Any medical care you may have received, and how's your pet doing? So you can scan this QR code and then report it to this community health assessment clinic from the Ohio Department of Health, which it's interesting that they've kind of updated the name. When really it's just looking at gathering information on who may be sick in the area and who may not. Reducing your exposure to, so this one is from the ATSD, the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. And it's talking about if you can smell it, it can be dangerous and affect your quality of life. The things it's saying to look out for: dizziness, watery eyes, stuffy nose. See if this sounds familiar to the story that Ashley was just talking about, to what Melissa was just describing. So substances that produce odors can sometimes trigger physical symptoms. Symptoms usually occur when the substance is present at irritation levels. However, you can sometimes have symptoms when the substance in the air is below levels of irritation. The most common symptoms from environmental odors are headaches and nausea. Others include dizziness, watery eyes, stuffy nose, irritated throat, cough and wheezing, especially if you have allergies and asthma and other chronic lung problems, sleeping problems due to throat irritation and cough. And now people are reporting lesions in their throat and around their tongues. Things to look out for: if the odor has a very unpleasant smell, if you've had a previous bad experience with the odor, if you believe the odor is harmful, if you feel stressed out by the odor. So if the odor is so strong that it's causing sensitivity in other areas. Some of the things that it has listed here: semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, textiles, fabric, paper, rubber, fertilizer, ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, which is one of the things that was leaked and burned, food processing plants, livestock, wood treatment. hydrogen sulfide, sulfur oxides, benzene, ethanol, sulfur dioxide. So, and it says coal fired power plants and vehicle exhaust. So imagine lighting vinyl chloride with a ton of other substances on fire, and a massive mushroom cloud expands over miles. What the hell is going to happen? So you see that flyer, you can see it right in front of your eyes. You guys can look this up on the internet. You can look up these chemicals. They're at your fingertips, and then you can smell them, feel them, and then you're carrying that with you every day. What are you all pushing for right now? I know that they said that that Norfolk Southern is now going to be relocating people, but it's what, $500 to $2,000 a month they're giving folks. And then I wonder about the folks that they already gave the $1,000 to. Are they
It's
still
temporary?
Locate? Yeah.
But it's temporary. So I mean, that's amazing to me that right now during this, they'll relocate, but not permanently, or not buy people's homes that have mortgages. Like myself, if my home was bought and I could start a clear slate, possibly buy another home. But at this point, I can't. And I mean, I wouldn't even want to let the bank take it, because then they're going to have someone else move in there, and I can't do that. If I know I personally could not do that, morally, I would feel terrible, because I have enough rooms for kids. I mean, it's just wild to me that what they're doing, and then they're offering that amount of money. If they're able to do that, why not just give it all up front? If someone wants to rent something, here going to get you going, get you out of town. If this is what helps with your rent, start there, and then start with the people that have mortgages, or the people that have children in a certain age group, or the people that have immune problems. They need to be talking to these people, and they're not talking to anyone. I mean, we took our turns at the mic and they're not listening.
So a big part of it is getting these, it takes a few weeks, especially for some of these gases and VOCs, but getting the independent testing and results is going to be huge, because right now they're talking about feelings and, do you feel the odors stressing you out? Well, the first night I got in there, I got a bloody nose, and I'm like, well, that's cool, that's normal. And then watery eyes. I actually remember part of our video, I couldn't even see you because my eyes wouldn't stop watering and my face was just gushing. I'm like, that's gross. The numbing, all the things that you said, and that's just for the known chemicals. I'm not even talking about the combinations that they're not even looking at. But getting the independent testing, getting the community organized. So one of the things, the few things I can help from Flint is helping the residents like Ashley try to organize the community and gather the health data, because nobody's doing a proper epidemiological study, because again, that would prove that there was a problem. But then also helping the residents have a place to speak and talk about this, because I don't know, and everybody can judge from outside unless you've lived in a disaster where the government, elected officials, corporations are actively killing you. It's different. Everybody comes to the realization of what's happening at a different pace. A lot of people don't want to believe they're victims or they've been victimized, because that takes the power away from them. And a lot of people have always thought, if I do the right thing and pay my taxes and I abide by the laws, nothing bad can happen to me, because that's we're all in our own little bubble. Well, when the government and corporations go shoving their toxins into your bubble, it takes you a minute. And also, let's not talk about the health impacts, high blood pressure, like Ashley mentioned, the insomnia, the headaches, the neurological damage. So your processing's a little slower because you're getting brain damage, and also the stress that also attacks your blood pressure and your neurological way of thinking and all this stuff. So unless you've actually lived in a disaster, please don't judge anybody. And remember, the residents need help. So instead of saying, hey, get up and do this, and hey, get up and do that, and hey, get up and do that, what can you do to help? So the biggest thing is helping the residents organize, getting them proper PPE. But the question is, we don't know what all y'all are being exposed to in East Palestine. We don't know what you're going to be once they burn it again, and the folks nearby. So trying to find the proper PPE, unless everybody's going to be walking around spacesuits with their own oxygen, that's kind of expensive. So if anybody wants to start collecting, the proper kind of half mask, gas mask with the VOC and acid gas filters, they are not cheap at all. But the respirators we had were very expensive, and they were supposed to be for working at chemical plants. and guess what? It wasn't enough. So we don't know the answer. So it's hard to give direct answers right now. And the residents are scrambling to, one, stay alive, two, try to find out where they're going to go. The relocation is only a mile away, so that's hilarious because then it's going to burn on those people again. And also,
the relocation is only a mile away outside of the mile false fakey perimeter already?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And the money they're giving people, they're not even saying, like, what happens to their benefits? Like the folks that are on food stamps and they need healthy food now more than ever. What are the people who are getting childcare assistance to help them work so they can afford to live in their hotels and their wherever they're going? But what about people and whose kids are disabled and their adults who are disabled and on SSI? All of this money coming in can be counted against them. What about their Medicaid? The insurance they need, like what if they're going through, healthcare.gov and their income is directly impacting their premiums? Nobody's even looking at this. And I'm a social worker up here, so those questions come into my brain like, oh my God, you're going to be giving, quote, quote, without looking at the fine print, people money to what? To wreck everything else that you haven't blew up already? And so they're not giving people answers. They're not moving them far. Also, what if you don't have good credit to go rent a new place? Like,
right.
Who's helping with that? And also, especially if you have a mortgage already, the debt to income ratio don't look too good. So I don't know if they, I get it. Wealthy people have no idea how credit works, budgeting, and, having to pay bills. I get that. But this is, it's a slap in the face. And also, well, $500, what's it going to buy? Like, has anybody been in this world, like, recently at all? And again, how far away are they going to be able to move to get away from this mushroom cloud? And they're going to have another one. They're going to light this stuff up again. So where exactly are these folks supposed to move? And so it's just a slap in the face. And I think I worry because I saw some of the testing agreements when Norfolk had said, oh, we'll send people to test your air. No, they didn't. But the paperwork said it was an open-ended thing. They could come in the house at any time. And it didn't say what they were testing for. But again, people just want help. So they're not going to know, and the only reason I can say these things is because we were screwed over in Flint and still have been coming up on 9 years. So we've been through this. Norfolk's coming up with some new things I haven't seen, but it's still the same playbook. They're going to give people little tiny pieces and be like, enjoy your little nuggets, poor people. Now go away. We don't care about your death. And the things, here's some things that we're going to give you to help, but it's actually going to cause more harm. So it's hard. So the residents are organizing, doing the best they can, being poisoned. And no, we should not be marching and protesting in East Palestine because, one, the city doesn't need it, but two, also, you don't want to go down there and get sick. Like I said, I was only there for a couple of days, and it took me twice as long to get feeling back to normal once I got back up to Flint, of all places. So it's not like it's great. But, so it's going to be yes, and the residents are already working on it in the lab. They're working on organizing and where to take this to, because obviously the mayor, he's part-time. It's a small, tiny town, guys. So, and he doesn't have the money. So they need to go to where the money is, go to where the decisions are being made, and go there. However, that all costs money. So if anybody wants to get together an organizing fund, and with PPE and all that stuff, great. Because otherwise it's just big words in a chat, and it's not really super helpful.
Pressure your state house too. And pressure your state house too.
Absolutely.
Pressure District 5 EPA, because the Pennsylvania State House is subpoenaing the CEO of Norfolk Southern on how they're handling this. Coming straight down from the governor, while DeWine and the Democrats and Republicans in Ohio doing anything.
And also, the federal government would be able to do more in East Palestine if their governor, if their state legislature would file for a state. Now, they're not going to get a disaster because it's man-made. That's another stupid law that people did for states' rights. We can't have the federal government trampling in on us. So they put the Stafford Act in place, and that's bad in situations like this. However, they could still file for a state of emergency that would get the CDC to do a CASPER study door to door, that would get the ATSDR on site, that would get actual federal resources in to help these people. But the state refuses to bring anybody in because they don't want them to see what's going wrong here.
Absolutely. And Ashley, I would ask, and Melissa, if you want to hang out a little bit longer, Ashley, you're welcome to hang out with us too. I know we're going on 6:30 and I saw the kiddo running behind you. So I didn't want to keep you on too long, but I was going to ask you how people can, help, just like some of the suggestions Melissa was making, but are there any organizing groups? Is there any ways that people can help? How can folks on the outside support you guys in any ways that you all are doing any organizing or needs that you have or places that they can go to help?
I know we do need the PPE, and it is difficult to get that. And a lot of people can't afford it. So you watch the news, you see people walking around town and people don't have it. And there's a reason for it, because the type we need isn't that accessible at what we're given right now to work with. People do need to get out. We're trying to organize something like that. It's kind of, there's many different aspects to it, or to conquer them all at once. But I think our main goals are to get people out safe right now. And if they would even deem it to the point where they could erase our debt, that would be perfect, because then that gives people the option to get out. That's what we really need. And I'm not money hungry. If I could just get out and start over new, give my kids something to really look forward to, because they know where we are. They know our house is there. They know we can't go there. I mean, this is putting more trauma and stress on everyone. And you cry at nights because you think, wow, this isn't getting better. It's only getting worse. Or you really hear everyone's story and you want to help everyone, but you can't. So, I mean, PPE would help. It would really help a lot for the people there that want it. But right now it's kind of hard. I mean, write letters, you guys. If anyone that's watching this, hey, write a letter. Say, we've heard stories. We want these people to have help. Why aren't you helping? That's going to make an impact. And you guys have the numbers. Tell your grandmother would probably love to write a letter. Anyone that could write a handwritten letter or an email. Those are the things that are going to help right now for what you guys can do.
Pressure the state house representatives. And tomorrow I'll make a post on Status Coup's Twitter, and we'll share the names of the state house reps in Ohio. And folks, that way folks will have that resource, and they can call, they can write. And DeWine's office, Governor DeWine's office, it's a great place to call. District 5 EPA, that's another great place to lean on and pressure. So that kind of goes. It's been 9 years in Flint. The anniversary is coming up in 1 month. Today was the 1 month anniversary of the burn in East Palestine. Next month is the 9-year anniversary of the crisis in the discovery of the crisis in Flint. I mean, the actual crisis was going on long before that, right? But 9 years now fighting this battle. What updates do you have for us, Melissa? Where are you guys at right now with what's going on?
It was bittersweet, but I found out February 15th, we had gone back to court to force because one of our many, many lawsuits, and yes, we definitely have lawyers that are working with us in Flint, also working with East Palestine residents, especially those with toxic tort experience, because we're still going through all of our civil cases, but we're also going through our federal Safe Drinking Water Act case about the pipe replacement and getting the service lines, the lead and galvanized steel service lines replaced at no cost to the residents. State has to pay for it, city has to do it. Well, we got this mayor in who isn't for the people. He had attacked the previous mayor. There we go. And so now we're stuck with this dude, and he has done everything to stop the service line replacement program. So we had to go back to court. We've had to go back and hold them in contempt or hold them in violation of our settlement, which was, we settled it and agreed March 28th of 2017, and we were supposed to be done by 2020. And here, I don't know if anybody's got a calendar handy, but it's 2023. And people still don't have their pipes replaced. They still don't have their yards. Mine's not even restored. So there's still a big, huge hole in my front yard causing flooding, which is wonderful. But again, just like every disaster, like what East Palestine's going through and going to go through, they expect you to just get sick, die, move, leave, and give up. And when people ask me why we don't move here, it's the same thing. One, I'd never let anybody buy with kids, especially buy my poison water house. And also, too, like, I don't know where through all the traveling in North America and Canada that, North America, I guess Canada is North America. Sorry, brain damage. That I would go to that's not already dealing with contamination or has the emergency manager law that caused the Flint water crisis to happen on the books in 37 different states in the United States. So everybody is a potential Flint, and whether it be air, soil, water. And unfortunately, East Palestine, we're joined at the hip now because it's the same playbook. So they're waiting for us to get sick, die off, give up. Our attorneys give up, but we have the Natural Resources Defense Council and ACLU of Michigan that have been fighting with us since 2015. And we, so we won again. I actually found out when I was down in East Palestine that we won. So yay, hooray for that. But boo, we're getting sick and my face is bleeding out. And, you know, we're looking what's happening to the residents down there in East Palestine. So it's kind of a bittersweet win. Once again, where the judge had said that, and he had rendered the decision in less than 2 weeks, which is super fast for a federal judge, but said, do the work for God's sake. And, they'd gone after me trying to say that what I was doing was political. I'm like, no, you're just still letting people die. But lead levels are high. They still increase. We still have bacteria infections because we still have crumbling infrastructure. And all the chemicals and all the junk they want to throw at it is in no way, shape, or form okay. You know, I mean, it's just continuing. We just over Super Bowl weekend, we had a huge main break where we didn't have water. And then we were under a boil advisory, but we had to remind them, filter then boil, because boiling just condenses the metals. So great. But it also releases the total trail of methane, the carcinogens into the air. So wins and losses. So I'm trying to, unfortunately, help prep Ashley and her crew on wins and losses. You got to hold on to those little wins because you're up against, the corporations that have all more money than God and the government who, is controlled by that same big, huge bunch of money. But when you don't give in and you don't give up and you fight, you actually make a change. And for anybody who's wondering, I know somebody had asked, it's day 3,237 since Flint's had clean, safe water. However, we haven't given up. We haven't stopped. We're not going anywhere until it's done right, because we want to set this example for everybody. And now, I mean, we've been working with other communities, like, Benton Harbor and stuff and Newark and everything. We were able to help them and use the disaster that is Flint to kind of shame politicians into this. And here's a fun thing. When you reach out to DeWine, remind him that he's treating his people worse than Snyder treated the people of Flint. That's a stinger. That one hurts. So go ahead and use that. We like to use our tragedy for shaming, people, and maybe get them to do something better. Okay, nobody has the aspirations and hope that everything's going to be fixed fine. However, people are going to fight to get what they deserve and fight to be made whole. And that's where we could use everybody instead of the fighting and finger pointing, and we could use everybody to get behind these towns and these cities that are actively fighting for their lives and the lives of people around them, and nobody becomes them. And that's like the real hero type of thing. Like MCU is cool and all that stuff, and DC, whatever. But if you look at these folks, these residents, they're amazing. I'm proud of the work that Ashley's doing and her crew is every day, because one, they're surviving, because that's a huge pushback to survive, but also they're, absolutely trying to disrupt the lies, the gaslighting, and the profiteering that's happening off of their disaster. And that is true heroism right there. So she won't talk about it, but Ashley also has a GoFundMe she's been using to help other people in her community. So that's important right there. And also another thing that can be done is MSM, it doesn't do the greatest job. Obviously, we've all known that and talked about it. If you can share this out, share these stories out from the residents, that helps us break through the media bubble, and it helps residents get their voices out, but also it'll help them, and you'll know how to actually help the residents instead of just being like, oh, well, they're fine. Oh, well, they need this and that. And so, because we know everybody cares, and we know that people absolutely want to help, because, we have to think that in our house, that not everybody's, garbage like the poisoners are, but we just need everybody on the side of the people, so that way when this happens to you, we got your back too. We hope it doesn't. Always hope it doesn't. But this is the United States of America, the corporations that run this. So let's just be realistic and try to, lay the groundwork down to protect everybody from becoming Flint and East Palestine, Newark, Milwaukee, East Chicago, Oakland, all of these contaminated.
Appalachia. Yep.
Appalachia, right. Everybody's sucking in coal ash and drinking coal ash. Indiana, Ohio, everybody. Because we're not disposable people, all right?
That's right.
And we didn't do this to ourselves. We didn't vote for this. We didn't ask for this, but we sure aren't sitting around taking it. So let's just keep that in mind, and let's support the people of East Palestine with what they need.
The Pentagon has lost more money in the last 9 years. Flint could have been fixed 100 times over. What's happening right now in East Palestine could have been fixed 300 times over. Now, those are just estimates, but when you lose $40 trillion in a decade, you lose it. Where the hell did that go? But you can't come in as the EPA. You can't, come in and get people relocated. And it's insane to me. What are our tax dollars going to if that's not the bare minimum? So we need to get those laws reversed too. We need to work on, this idea. What was the name of, I forget.
The Stafford Act.
The Stafford Act. Yes.
Because unless it's an act of God, unless it's a natural disaster, the federal government can't come in, and they can't declare it a disaster, and the federal government can't come in. And this screwed us in Flint because it was the state of Michigan that poisoned us. And so basically the state of emergency left us in the hands of our offenders, of our poisoners, which is why we're not fixed yet. And that's what's happening. DeWine and the state legislature are blocking federal funds, resources to come in. Not that they're going to be great and fix everything, but more things can get exposed if there's more eyes on the problem, right? And there's more outlets. Because right now, they're the only people that East Palestine has to go to for help is the state, who is hand in hand with Norfolk Southern, the railway that did this. So again, when you leave the fox in control of the hen house, there's not going to be any hens left, except for some real mean ones like some I know down there that ain't going nowhere and they're sticking around, but also be safe. Now, the whole thing is we have to overturn the Stafford Act because it's insane. It's ridiculous. We have to stop this thing where we're in silos thinking that, oh, well, that's Ohio and Pennsylvania. It's not happening to me. Wrong. Test your water. Because everybody thinks, oh, it's Flint. They're a bunch of poor black and brown folks that, it can't happen to me. Wrong. Test your water. Test your air. What's in your food? All that kind of stuff. Look at this. It is a nation. Somebody put in there, and I love you for this. It is a nationwide, it's a national issue because the air doesn't stop at the state line. The water doesn't stop at the state line. The soil doesn't stop at the state line. Come on now, and stop thinking this can't happen to you. I'm not saying, give up and everything, but fight back and realize that these are your neighbors. These could be you. And you wouldn't want to be left abandoned. So yeah, absolutely. Look into your own emergency manager law. That's on 37 state books. Because that means that if there's a disaster like this, the state can walk in and take over and suspend your democracy, which is what happened to Flint, which is kind of what's happening to East Palestine right now. The mayor has no power. But also get on the Ohio legislature and keep up supporting the Pennsylvania legislature that are doing anything. Get on them and say, you need to do this. So make these, like all these people that are irritated, and yes, I agree about the fluoride because it's an acid too. Get a hold of them and let them hear it. Okay, shame them. That's the only way these people want to get reelected. These people want their, shareholders to be happy. These people want to police Wall Street. Shame them. Shame them, shame them, shame them, because that's your power. It's not going to be, reaching out for empathy because they don't have a soul. So shame them and make them do the work. And then realize, and also that East Palestine is not just the hottest little topic of the week. Flint's not just a little hot topic of this. These are real people, and you're going to stand with the real folks. And remember, if you don't forget about us, we're not going to forget about you. And if it happens to you, which we hope it doesn't, always hope it doesn't. But I'll tell you what, these are some of the most amazing folks across this whole 9-year trial that we've been through. We've met some of the most amazing people. And I'm just happy to call Ashley a friend. We get to vent about being poisoned. It's great, but we also get to plot and work on organizing and fighting back. So don't think just because you don't see the protests in the news, not that they'd be covered anyway, that nothing's being done. So they're not helpless. They've been victimized, but they're not helpless. They're not just sitting there waiting for somebody to come save them. They absolutely know they won't, but they could also use your help and support. So, and also support independent journalism because they're the only people that are telling these stories. So there's another one of my, speeches. Sorry, not sorry.
Thanks, Melissa, that activist spirit. Love it. But thank you guys both so much for joining us. Ashley, if you have any final words, I think I've kept you guys on almost 2 hours, but I think we went over some crazy updates today and, really just reminding people that it's not over and it's not going to be over for you guys for a little while until they do something, come in, relocate you, and make sure that you're healthy.
I think as long as people keep talking about it and sharing their frustration and sending letters and really getting it out there for them to see, it might help us do something. So everyone that's working over here can start to realize, well, maybe a lot more people are impacted by this. Maybe a lot more people are upset just than the people in this town. maybe they're talking a little bit more, because we're kind of stuck here until something gets done. So we need your help a lot more than what you think. And you are important with our numbers. And listen, I'm doing this in my pajamas, just like how you guys would at home. So I'm just like you. And I mean, I have met a lot of great people that I wouldn't have come across either way. And it's beautiful to work with them and understand where they come from and the knowledge these people have. And I feel blessed that I have this group and team working with me.
Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you all both for coming on today, for, chatting through what's going on. And maybe tomorrow they'll get their ass in gear. Who knows? But thank you guys for keeping people updated. Thanks for the update on Flint as well, Melissa, and for just keeping ringing the alarm bells.
And thank you guys for continuing to cover, and for all y'all for listening. I saw somebody said they'd be fighting naked. You do that. You fight naked. And yes, I can see some bottle of wine. I saw that too. Watching the comments, I just can't comment in there. But yeah, and you guys are amazing. So thank you all. And thank you for supporting Status Coup. And again, and the people that are doing the fighting. So thank you guys. You're all amazing.
All right. Well, you ladies have a good night. Thank you for joining. Oh, man. Whew. They're doing a lot, especially the independent testing that Ashley brought. Melissa drove down all the way from Flint, came down to do independent testing. That's what they were talking about, wearing N95 masks and still feeling sick. They're doing the testing when other organizations aren't. There are a few places that are doing independent testing. I believe that the University of Kentucky is one. There's one other university that's doing independent testing, but it may be a while before we get the results of those. Some environmental agencies are coming to help as well. But as long as we keep the pressure on and we keep ringing the bell, which reminds me, Colin, do you happen to have the graphic that we made earlier today? If not, I can add it for Lewis going back to East Palestine. Thank you. I thought we showed it earlier. Thank you so much. So Lewis DeAngelis and John Farina actually covered East Palestine. For those of you who have not seen, please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Also, if you can, join us at statuscoup.com/join. Louis DeAngelis will be going back on the ground on Monday. Next Monday, he's not only going to be talking to the local residents in East Palestine, he's going to be talking to folks around the region, going to get updates on what's going on, updates on, what resources and services Norfolk Southern is providing, what's the latest on the testing, and then, of course, handing the microphone to the residents. Because he spoke to folks when they were down there the last time that were 5 miles away and having symptoms. He spoke to folks that were going to the doctor 10 miles away. We spoke to a woman who had drank some coffee, wasn't feeling so well, had some strange smells and a headache. She goes to the doctor and she's diagnosed with chemical burns. We've spoke to folks that were about 2 to 3 miles away, had a farm, a creek near the farm where they were seeing dead fish, dead birds. They themselves could smell the creek, so that they could walk outside on their back porch and smell the creek from their home. So it's not just the 1 mile arbitrary radius that Norfolk Southern has deemed to be the danger zone. It can go farther beyond that because air moves, water moves, soil moves when water moves, soil can move when air moves. So we're unsure through the EPA and through Norfolk Southern's testing, because they're not testing beyond this 1 mile radius currently, although in Pennsylvania some testing has started. We're not sure the wider sweeping impacts. And we're going to go down and visit. We're going to talk to some more folks. So please like this stream so that more people see it. Please join and subscribe so that you can get updates to our coverage. And also you can join for $5, $10, or whatever you would like to give per month. That helps us set our budget. When you join, that money goes to covering for things like this, to cover for our staff members, to cover for Lewis going on the ground, because on the ground coverage is what we prioritize, getting the voice out, listening to the people on the ground, uncovering what's often covered up by mainstream media or what they just don't report on. Because whether it's lazy journalism, whether it is, and you could take that down, Colin, whether it's lazy journalism, whether it's, the folks who advertise with them and in corporate pressures, but oftentimes they'll take the line of the agencies rather than doing the further investigation. So this is what we're going on the ground and speaking to independent scientists, independent researchers as well. So I do have one more update for you guys, and then I'm going to get to the super chats. If anyone has any super chat, that's another way that you can support. Usually I get through them. We kind of stop in between the stream to read the super chats and talk with you guys. Today, since we had Melissa on and Ashley on, really wanted to center their stories and their voice for what they've been experiencing there as our guest today. So we can and we'll be reading the super chats at the end. One more update about Cop City. I don't know if you guys, some of you guys may be new, you're new to the channel. 1 month ago, we were in Atlanta, Georgia, and we were covering what is set to be a $90 million massive police complex. This police complex has helipads for Black Hawk helicopters. It is being funded by Wells Fargo Bank, Home Depot, several other businesses in the area have given funds for this development. Even the Israeli military are set to come down and train our police force. We're talking tanks, we're talking militarization, and we are talking about the Atlanta complex possibly being a model for this type of police militarization in other cities. The Atlanta citizens are strongly against it. It's also being built in one of the last large green spaces in Atlanta. Most of the green spaces are gone. This is the last large park in Atlanta. And it's also built on indigenous land. So not only is it indigenous land, it's the last green space in Atlanta, and they're wanting to bulldoze it over and build a massive complex right smack dab in the middle of the Black community and a poor community. Very problematic. Last month, Tina Desiree Berg, one of our reporters, was on the ground with Colin. Colin, if you want to hop on for just a second. I don't know if your camera ready, but you could join me if you'd like. You were on the ground with Tina, and I know that some of the things that you guys covered was the fact that 11 people at the time had been arrested and labeled domestic terrorists.
Yeah, there was the initial bout of people that I believe was 11 that they had gone when they were simply just doing essentially what was a sit-in at the public forest, and they arrested 11 initially and labeled them as domestic terrorists. And then at the protest we had covered at the actual city itself, they had arrested, I believe it was like 7 or 8 more, somewhere around there, and labeled them with domestic terrorism as well. And if you watch the live stream, actually, when we were there and I was filming, you can see the police literally come up and they're not looking for the people who did what could be considered domestic terrorism, like lighting the one car on fire. They were just grabbing whoever was nearby and random and charging them with domestic terrorism via I forget the name of it, but what they used to charge mafia of, like, hey, you were present in the general area while an event happened, therefore it's identical to you doing the event.
Yes, and that's new regulations by the Department of Homeland Security, which expanded the definition of what domestic terrorism is in order to encompass civil protest, particularly after January 6th. But they were starting to gear up, after the Black Lives Matter protest under Trump. Then Biden took it, way next level. And you can basically be charged with domestic terrorism, just guilty by association. And we had access to the some folks mailed us or emailed us the police reports, and it was crazy things like holding an incendiary. Come to find out that they had fireworks near them. Was next to someone who threw a rock at the police. You standing next to someone, they throw a rock in the vicinity of the police, and that's domestic terrorism. Up to 19, some of the folks that were arrested at the Stop Cop City protest were just there protesting. So 19 were charged then. And then if you could pull up this article really quick, Colin. 23 more as of this weekend now face domestic terrorism charges. During this weekend, there was a protest that was set by the Atlanta Forest Defenders to last through an entire week. And Saturday, they had a peaceful protest. Everything was great. There were no issues. Sunday, a large concert with hundreds of people ended up breaking out. There were issues where, yes, some equipment got burned. There were other things that happened, 2 large fires, I believe. But my understanding is the SWAT team, before this happened, the SWAT team started encroaching upon the folks that were at this concert, gearing up for the week of protest, and had started arresting people and started, riling things up, as often happens with protest. And this is just a brief summary today. We are still gathering more details on what happened. Want to do justice. I don't just want to give you guys the story that's coming from the mainstream media. We have spoken with several protesters that will be speaking with some of the organizers and protesters that were on the ground. Some of the folks that know firsthand what happened. We may be speaking with a clergy member who was also at a protest today at the city council, where they're looking to approve more of the funding for Cop City, where through an organization called Beloved Commune, more than, I believe it was 3 to 4 dozen local clergy members from across religious spectrums came to protest this highly unpopular, massive industrial police complex being built in Atlanta. The first city council meetings they had on this project, hundreds of people showed up. Surveys showed and comments showed 80% disapproval of this massive complex. Atlanta doesn't want it. Atlanta doesn't want it, and it's still being built. And instead of voting with what Atlanteans want, the city council is voting in line with these corporations and the police complex. So that's what the problem we have here. And Tina's going to be digging more into it this week, so please stay tuned. She has I believe that she has an interview set up with an organizer for Wednesday, who's been there since almost the beginning, working on the ground. She also has more lined up. So a little bit of to let you guys know, go ahead, hit like, subscribe, keep an eye out. Tina will be covering this more in detail. Right now, Don't want to give you just the police line, just what we're getting from the media, because there's a lot of information that we don't know. We want to bring you guys people that were on the ground, people that were there, people that saw what happened, so that we can get the full story. So we will be digging in more into what happened at the Cop City protest. We'll be speaking to folks that are standing up. There's hundreds of Atlanteans that have been standing up. As one anonymous protester told me today, she said, one of us stand up, we get arrested, we get threatened, we step down, and another one takes our place. So Atlanta is not happy with Cop City, and we're gonna see what happens there, and we're gonna speak to folks that are directly impacted by this massive industrial complex. So I think we can hop on over to some super chats. Tony D, thank you for the $2. My heart goes out to Ashley, right? She has kids. Her kids have been sick. She's been sick. She's sick in her own home. She feels drunk walking around in her own home, and yet she doesn't have the resources to be able to relocate. That's her home. She owns it. It's hard enough to get to the point to have something like that today, and now she's stuck, and she's also worried about her health and safety. Fly Choppa Fly. Hey Choppa. Love Melissa. Melissa Mays brings the heat. I don't fangirl very much over folks, but as an activist, I admire her a great deal. She is amazing. Fly Choppa Fly, knowing legal system insist on how was before versus now. I'm not sure. Oh, how was it before versus now, knowing the legal system? I'm not sure what you mean there, Fly. The legal system to deal with corporations. It's always been a bit like this. It's definitely it's worsened over the last several decades. But we've always had problems with companies covering up pollution. I mean, Aaron Brockovich has been dealing with it for 30 years. So it's not anything new in our country. And it's just getting more complex as to how we can uncover it. All right, guys, please like, please subscribe, please join, all of that jazz. Thank you all so much for joining. Thanks everybody for popping off in the chat and keeping each other's company and sharing information. I was watching today and there was so much going on, and that was awesome to see. Please join us tomorrow. We'll be chatting more. We'll be giving more of an update on Stop Cop City, what's happening in East Palestine, and we'll be bringing other information, other stories to you guys as well. Jordan will likely be back tomorrow, so you'll get to see him instead of me rambling on like a rookie. But thank you guys so much for joining. Appreciate it, and talk to y'all soon.